lively crowd ready to engage with persons who have offered themselves for public office, and we are excited about that. The American Association of University Women is very proud to co-sponsor this event. If you don't know anything about AAUW, we've been around since 1881. That's quite a few years. I haven't made that mark yet myself, but we are a nonpartisan organization open to women and men who have completed or are in the process of completing their education at the collegiate level. We offer scholarships to women who are returning to school after perhaps their time away, like I did, or young women who are currently in school. So, I want to welcome you, I want to thank you for taking part in this very important luncheon, and I want to thank the people who have stepped forward to run for office. Our democracy is a precipice, and it's at a precipice, and it is, we are shaken, and that is probably a very good thing. So, without further ado, I will let the program begin. Ask if we have other sponsors who wish to speak. Again, welcome. Thank you for being here and event.
And this first half is going to be moderated by the Young Democrats, and I'm going to hand it over to them.
Thank you all for being here today. We're really excited about our sponsored panel. We're also co-sponsoring. So if I could get group one candidates up here, I'll give a little bit about myself. We've got Kelly Fryer, Senator Katie Hobbs, January Contreras, and Sheila Ballou. I am the NAU Young Dems Vice President. I've been involved with the Coconino County Democratic Party, as well as politics in Arizona for about 3 years now, and I am on the verge of graduating, so we'll see what comes with all of that.
Hi, my name is Josephine Gresham. I'm a sophomore at NAU. I've been involved in politics since 2016. I was a high school senior at Black High, and I was involved with the 2016 AP coordinated campaign. And I'm just super excited for this event. It's nice to see all these strong women that myself. Okay, so this first question is for all of the candidates. What inspired you to run for office, and did anything hold you back? And we will do a 2 minutes per person.
Hi, everybody. I am Kelly Fryer, and I'm a candidate for a governor of Arizona. I really want to thank all the hosts, the sponsors today, especially the Young Dems. The leadership that Young Democrats are taking across the state in this election year is really inspiring. So I am I'm the CEO of the YWCA in Southern Arizona. I've spent my entire career fighting for progressive causes, working at the grassroots level, and leading and transforming organizations as a senior leader and CEO. I got my start as a pastor, as a Lutheran pastor for 15 years, seminary professor, and in my role at the YWCA, where our mission is ending racism, empowering women, and promoting peace, justice, freedom, and dignity for all. That's the mission. It's basically my platform. I have a little superhero cape underneath my jacket. But I want to tell you about something that happened a few months ago at the YDEM. One of our best volunteers, a woman who has shown up every Saturday morning for 3 years faithfully to help other immigrant women learn English, get skills to get a job in this country, and kind of get her life get their lives started in their new home. She disappeared. She came here with her family when she was about 7 years old from Mexico. They were undocumented. She just missed the cutoff to qualify for DACA. So she's been going through the process for many years to become a permanent resident. And a few months ago, she took what she thought was the last step. On the advice of her attorney, and according to the laws of our country, she went back across the border to get her paperwork signed. Last stop. When she got there, she was told that our government was not going to approve her request and that she could reapply for permanent residency in 10 years. And they refused to allow her to come back. In the meantime, her American husband and her 12-year-old American son were home waiting for her for dinner. That's why I'm running to be the governor of Arizona. Because the people that I love and the communities that I care about are in danger. And to be honest with you, I was not hearing the candidates in this race talk about the issues that I care about. I didn't hear them talking about immigration, or poverty, or mass incarceration, and our private prison system, and the way in which people of color, particularly, and people who live in economic poverty, are hurt disproportionately by what's happening to this country. I'm running to be the governor of Arizona because I think we need to change the policies and the laws of this state, and I think I have the resume to make that happen. And honestly, I think I'm the only candidate in this race who could win against Doug Ducey and the Koch brothers.
Okay, so the question is, what inspired me to run for office, and did anything hold me back? Is that right? Good morning, good afternoon. I'm January Contreras. I'm so glad to meet all of you. If you don't roll your R's, Contreras works just as well. I'm running for Attorney General, and I'm so glad to be here with you. I have been in this space before with some of you, and in fact have been here with my own 2 teenage sons and husband at the Pinecone Drop several years. So that's a great time. What inspired me to run? My whole career has been about public service. I am an Arizonan through and through. My family has been here for 4 generations. I love my state. When I see my state continue to elect people who are not accountable to the voters, to the people of Arizona, but instead are accountable to some either national partisan checklist or some big donor agenda, I worry. And I'll tell you, as a lawyer, the reason I became a lawyer was because I never wanted to be powerless to fight for myself or for those around me. And this is a moment where we have to fight like heck. We as a community of people, and it's not about party. This is about all of us who care about our state, who care about the future that we're leaving behind for our kids. It's our time to stand up and say, we deserve an Attorney General who is going to protect the constitutional rights of all people in this state, not pick and choose who gets to have their rights protected. This is a time when we're going to step forward and take on the corruption. I don't know if you saw the Newsweek article that came out last week. It identified Arizona as singularly working to create secrecy in who is donating to campaigns. And it showed that in 2006 in Arizona, $35,000 was coming here in dark money. Guess what the number in 2014 is? It was $10 million. 2006, 35,000, 2014, 10 million. Who knows what 2018 is? We are in the fight of our lifetime. I agree with our introduction here. We're fighting for our democracy. We're fighting for the strength of our community. We're fighting for our rights. And we will do that together. At a time when the courts and the lawyers matter more than ever, our Attorney General matters more than ever. And I'm here to fight for all of us. And we're going to win this race. My race has been named as one of the top 5 Attorney General races in the country by the DNC to flip. So
Hi, I'm Senator Katie Hobbs, and I'm sorry I snuck in a little bit late and missed the introductions, but I'm running to be Secretary of State. And I currently serve in the legislature as the Senate Minority Leader, and I've been in the legislature for the last 8 years. And what inspired me to run in the first place was my background and career as a social worker, serving my community, and watching people struggle, and watching a government that was not responsive to the most vulnerable in our communities, the people who needed the government's assistance the most. A lot of what January and Kelly already talked about. And so I felt that my voice could better be used to fight for those folks within the Capitol, because I didn't feel like I was being very effective outside. And so that's why I ran for the legislature. And I decided to step up and run for Secretary of State because, again, a lot of the things that Kelly and January already talked about, our democracy is at stake. And there are folks that are actively working to make sure that the playing field is not level. They're putting their thumb on the scale and rigging the system and keeping people out of the process. And we need a Secretary of State who is determined to be a champion for every single voter and make sure that we have a level playing field and that everyone can use their voice in the electoral process. And that's, I really think, how we can change a lot of these other issues that we've talked about. The things I've been fighting for in the legislature, higher pay for teachers, more funding for education so that people have an equal chance in their lives, issues of poverty, issues of gun violence and common sense safety measures. Those are all the fights that we continue to have in the legislature, and year after year it feels like a broken record. If we have a democracy that allows everyone to participate, that's how we're going to move the needle and start winning on some of these issues and creating the Arizona that really reflects all of our shared values. I know in my 8 years at the legislature that the people elected to serve there do not represent the values of Arizona. And this race is how we can change that. It's how we will, this year, we have so much opportunity this election year. I think we're gonna do really well in electing statewide Democrats. And Secretary of State's office is how we're going to hold on to those wins, how we're going to continue to make gains in the legislature and really create a state that reflects all of our values. Thank you.
I'm the government-created brainless wave freak, and I can't imagine anybody caring more about justice than I do. I mean, I spend most of my time for something I have to read. So that's a lot of what I have to say. I've been a school counselor. I got my master's in guidance and counseling from NIU many years ago. And I've been a special ed teacher and a school counselor most of my life, and a justice advocate that has tried really hard to get justice for other people and myself.
So next, we have a question for January Contreras and Sheila Balloon. And that question is, what do you see as your biggest obstacles and why?
Okay, biggest obstacles and why. The reason I'm talking about dark money is because it's an obstacle for us. It's an obstacle for government that's beholden to people, quite frankly. I'd say that's one of the biggest obstacles. We have a job to do that gets the message out that this January person who's running for AG, she's a former county prosecutor, she's a former assistant attorney general, she worked for Napolitano for 12 years, and when she came back, I've seen what good governance looks like, and she's the person I've been trained under. That's what we're going to bring back. So having the resources to spread that message when the other side has millions of dollars in dark money. In 2014, APS put $425,000 into the election of Mark Brnovich. That's only what's on the record. We don't know what's behind the dark money. So that for sure is one of the biggest obstacles. With the budget we will have, how do we get to as many voters as we can? And of course, I'm trying to overcome that obstacle by traveling all around this state, by meeting incredible people like you, by listening to all of you so that I understand what it is that's impacting you in your lives and how the AG plays an increasingly important role in that. And, you know, that's what we're going to keep doing. This is a moment, not a week goes by when I don't have someone show up to an event for me who says, I've never been to a political event before. That is how we win this race.
Obstacle for me is just getting on the ballot. The people with the big money, like one of our candidates is reportedly to have $4 million. All she has to do is plop down the money and the attention companies will get it in a hurry. Well, for some poor folks like myself, I need a lot of help. I need all of you to circulate petitions, and you may not want to do that, but if you really care about Bernie Sanders' values and Elizabeth Warren, and you want to change the Congress, you better get somebody in there that will vote like them and not vote with the billionaire class. So I really need your help to get on the ballot. That's a big obstacle. Also, there's some forces that try to cause me some trouble. I'm just kind of sick right now, and they can do all kinds of things you can't even imagine. But that's something that you might not want to believe. But it's pretty crazy because they can make me sick. They can break my car. They can gas me. They can sleep deprive me. So anyway, I'm really needing a lot of help. Thanks.
Okay, so this next question is for Senator Katie Hobbs and Governor Kelly Fryer. How can we explain the inequality women face to people who think there isn't a problem?
So the question is, how can we explain inequality that women face to people who don't think that it's a problem? You know, what I am finding as I'm traveling around the state, I started campaigning full-time on February 1st. I think I have 7,800 miles on my little Prius since then. And I'm primarily going to small towns and rural communities, the reservations, underserved urban neighborhoods, places that a lot of politicians don't think to go. And I hear a common theme. When I met with the Kachan Tribal Council last week, I asked them for their advice. The number one thing they said is, don't forget about us. One of my first stops was a little town called Ajo on the far west side of Pima County. And I met with a man named Jose who's lived his whole life there. He's 80 years old. And he said, Kelly, I feel like we've just been abandoned by the state of Arizona. I think the point I want to make here is that people all across the state feel like we are suffering from inequity, from a lack of justice, from a lack of access. And so I guess I don't spend a whole lot of time talking about the particular inequality that women face, because there are so many other kinds of inequalities that people face on top of just being a woman. I will tell you this though, I live it. I live it every day, not only as a woman, but as a lesbian with a beautiful wife at home waiting for me. And you know, I think about the kinds of challenges in this race. One of the questions I get asked most often, and I'll tell you the truth, I get asked most often by men, well, what makes you think you're qualified to be the governor? And I'm like, really? I haven't spent 12 years in the legislature, but legislating is not necessarily the same thing as leading. And I haven't run for office before, but to a lot of people in this state, that's an advantage. What I have done is I've spent 25 plus years leading people at the grassroots level across political party to come together within an organization around a shared set of values and vision for what we can do together and transforming communities and changing lives. Now, doesn't that sound like a governor's resume if you ever heard one? Isn't that the kind of leadership that we need in a state where you have a third Dems and a third Republicans and a third Independents? Somebody who can bring people together and lead us forward into a new future? So, I don't spend a lot of time talking about inequality. You know, I just live it.
last Tuesday, it was Equal Pay Day, which is sort of the symbolic representation of the time it takes women to earn what men earned in the previous year. So that was April 11th. And the symbolism aside, really every day in America and here in Arizona is unequal pay day for women. And I gave some remarks on the Senate floor about equal pay day, or women, whatever it is, I just lost my train of thought. This is an economic justice issue. And if we close the pay gap for women in Arizona, we would eliminate a huge chunk of poverty here in Arizona, because this is an issue that not only affects women, it affects their families, it affects their quality of life, and a lot of people in the legislature don't understand that. I have introduced equal pay legislation the last 4 years, and it never gets a hearing. So we never get to talk about this issue in a meaningful way at the legislature, because people want to pretend that this is not a real issue, and it goes much deeper than the issue of equal pay. But if we had equal pay in Arizona, women would earn enough to buy another year's worth of groceries. They would have enough for 6 more months of rent and utilities or mortgage payments. And that is a huge issue, and I think that is symbolic of the inequality that we still face in Arizona. And I serve in an institution that doesn't even recognize among its own members the amount of sexist behavior that happens on a daily basis, and they don't want to address it. They were forced to this year because of the whole Don Shooter situation, but we still haven't come together to come up with a meaningful policy of how we can change it and actually hold elected officials accountable. So if it's a problem among the people elected, you can bet they're not addressing it among the people they represent, and we need to change that.
Wonderful. Well, thank you all so much. We really appreciated hearing from you. We'll let you get to sit down and eat. And now we'll ask up our next candidates. Let's do a quick round of applause for these wonderful candidates. So Katie, the state of Arizona will be receiving $7 million from the federal government for cybersecurity. What would you use these monies for? Do you support sending some of the funds to counties?
So cybersecurity is an incredibly important issue right now when we're looking at the fact that our election data was compromised by foreign influence, and our Secretary of State right now is absolutely refusing to acknowledge that this is a problem or tell the taxpayers and the voters what she and her office are doing to protect our data and the integrity of our elections moving forward. And so yes, the money needs to be spent to do that. There needs to be transparency and assuring the voters that something is being done and that we're using this money to secure the data and how we're doing that. And not just at the state level, but yes, down to all the counties and all of the election data. I think because of the Secretary's inaction on this and really burying her head in the sand, the governor recently announced a task force to work on this, but it's across the board in all of this state, and we need to really focus on the election issues, because that we know is a huge problem, and it's not being addressed right now.
All right, and so up next we are going to be having the rest of our candidates. So we've got Kathy Hoffman for Superintendent of Public Instruction. Felicia French for the Legislative District 6 State Representative. Representative Winona Benali for Legislative District 7. And
question is for both of the candidates. The same thing. What inspired you to run for office, and did anything hold you back?
Good afternoon. Thank you again for being here. My name is Kathy Hoffman, and I'm a Democratic candidate for Superintendent of Public Instruction. For me, this journey into politics began last year, and really, I can identify precisely the tipping point, and it's 2 words: Betsy DeVos. Really the tipping point for me. I watched her confirmation hearing. I felt absolutely sick to my stomach, and I thought to myself, how can we have a Secretary of Education who cannot answer even the most basic question about education policy and who has never taught in a school? I strongly believe that we must have more teachers and educators running for office if we want to see any kind of benefit for our schools. I am proud to be one of many women running for statewide office in Arizona and a clean elections candidate. I currently work for the Peoria School District down in North Phoenix, and I work in special education at a Title I school. So that means that many, if not most, of the students that I work with rely on the services and programs that our schools offer. They rely on free and reduced lunch, tutoring services, transportation, and comprehensive special education services. I strongly believe that in order to take our state from the bottom to the top, we must prioritize investing in our public schools, competitive pay for teachers, and ensuring the inclusion of all students, no matter their background, to have access to a high-quality public school education. As we have all seen in the recent month or so with the Red for Ed movement, teachers and parents and community members have woken up from a deep slumber. And I feel like for me that started a year ago. I have been fighting for these issues and talking to voters and talking to the community about the issues facing our schools. And now we are seeing the movement statewide, and I could not be more proud to be part of that movement fighting for these changes in our state. Thank you again for your time.
Hello, my name is Felicia French, and I'm running for House of Representatives for Legislative District 6, which that staff is a big part of. And what inspired me to run for office, my background is I'm a native Arizona. My family goes back for 3 generations. I joined the military when I was 17, and I was raised with public service at the forefront of my mind, and one way to do that was to join the military. I know a lot of people don't associate public service with the military, but if you're serving your country, you're serving your community, your people, and in so many ways. I started as a medic, and I became a nurse, and a medevac helicopter pilot. I kept it all in the healthcare arena because I really don't have a killer instinct, only when it comes to protecting my troops or my family. My daughter calls me Mama Bear, or people I see any injustice whatsoever. And so I stayed in the military, and of course you can't be a politically active in the military. And I saw so much wrong and injustice globally. And I traveled, I was in many developing countries, and I've always loved my country. I love my state, I love my country, but I also love the world. I'm kind of fond of this planet, in addition to my state. And I always equate it to neighbors. You know, you can love your family, but it doesn't mean you're going to throw the trash in your neighbor's backyard. You still have to love your neighbors, you still have to take care of them and look out for their best interests. And so I grew up with that, and throughout the military I did a lot of humanitarian missions. My last assignment I volunteered for was Afghanistan in 2010. So it was a real wake-up call as far as what's going on in the rest of the world. I've always been very much a student of history, so I equate that to see how history repeats itself. And I always ask myself, why? Why did we let this go? And I kept seeing it for complacency, and that's, to me, is the biggest concern we need to worry about is complacency. Most people, I think, are good. But not all of us act on that. We just sit back and think, oh, somebody else is going to take care of it. Somebody else is going to take care of it. Well, after I got out of the Army, 2016 happened for like a lot of us, November 2016. It hit home hard. I had to do something. I got to get out of that Army mode where you can't be politically involved. And I thought, I'm going to start doing something, because I'm not going to wait for somebody else to do it, because nothing will happen. And then I'm going to sit back and say, God, I should have done this, or I should have done that. So that's what got me started and why I want to do this and run for office. And it's all the reasons you're here. Obviously, you care. You care about your community, not just yourselves. Because you could just be sitting home and watching TV or reading a book or whatever if you just cared about yourself. So I want to thank all of you for being here, because it shows that you actually care too. And it warms my heart knowing that I'm not the only one in this room that gives a rat's behind about the greater good. So thank you for being here, taking the time out of your day to do this. And I am here to run for the very issues that were all mentioned before. I'm sorry, I'm going to stand in front of you. I care deeply and profoundly, and I want to bring passion to power. And I think if we're all passionate enough, we can make power out of that and turn the state around, starting with a local area and getting the state legislature in there and bills all to change things for the better. Thank you.